I absolutely love the analogy that Logan gave on Later Daters. She said when you're dating in your 20s, it's like a startup. So you have like two individuals coming together, looking to build, grow, and develop, right? Into a relationship. I think everybody can relate to like a startup business, right? But when you are dating later in life, right, in your late 40s, 50s, 60s, or 70s, she said it's more like a merger. So you have this established business and another established business that's coming together to merge those two businesses together, to have something bigger and better. I thought that was one of the greatest analogies when it comes to dating as a younger person compared to dating as a more seasoned person. And so in this video, I'm going to be talking about Netflix later daters. Let's go. Hey y'all, welcome back to Same Old T. It's your girl T. I came across this show a couple of weeks ago on Netflix. It is a reality dating show for people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. People who may be widowed, may be divorced, maybe have never gotten married, but they're looking for love now. They start off giving us a little bit of statistics stating that at this time here in America, there are more people single over the age of 55 than ever before. And so they kind of focus on a select few to kind of feature. And I really, really enjoyed this show. Maybe because it is kind of my demographic. I'm not quite 50, I'll be 50 next month in January, but I still could relate to the show. So in this video, I'm going to be kind of breaking down what happened with the they're not characters, the main people featured looking for, love and relationships later in life. So one catch is that they will all be going on blind dates, right? And they all get the assistance of a dating coach by the name of Logan. She's really, really good. I believe she's a behavioral scientist or therapist, and then she's an author and things of that nature. Like I think she's worked for Google and some other big corporations, helping them, with behavioral science and things of that nature, communication and everything. But she gives them tips, to kind of point out or discover, what might be holding them back. Why are they finding it challenging to find companionship, love, or relationships, later in life, based on, their flaws and things of that nature. And so I really enjoy her insight, and I'll talk more about that with each person that is featured. They only featured, I believe, 6 people. So in the first episode, we're going to talk about 3. So the first person we meet is Anise. She is 62 years old, absolutely gorgeous, amazing body, just got it going on, right? She's been married 3 times. I believe she has 3 children, adult children. And so she's very active, very fit. And so I take it that she's looking for somebody who can kind of match that energy. She does admit that she may be self-sabotaging, and that's why she's not getting to second and third dates. She is very educated. Um, Her first marriage was with her high school sweetheart, and he unfortunately died in a job-related accident. And so that kind of plays into a little bit of, some of the things that have held her back because she felt like she had to be so strong for her kids and things of that nature. And so then when she, kind of got over that hump and things of that nature, she began to invest in herself and seek higher education. So she does have a doctorate, and she believes that sometimes when she goes on dates and men find out that she, is highly educated, that, they feel intimidated, or she somehow feels like she has to kind of dim her light in order to, get to the second or third date. So before they can kind of, I guess, judge her, she's kind of cutting them off. And so she admitted these things, okay? And so Logan worked with her to kind of stay a little bit more open-minded. Don't feel like you have to dim your light if they feel a type of way about you being an educated, professional, woman, then they're not the one for you. And that's okay. So I was glad that Logan kind of gave her that bit of advice. So in this episode, she goes on her first date, and OMG, guys, when I tell you about this guy, you're going to be like, oh my goodness. Okay, so Anise goes on her first date and is with a gentleman named George. He's 60 years old. He's a two-time divorcee. He has one adult child. Now, I take it that this series is based in the Atlanta area, just from what they talk about. Now, George is living in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is not too far. So Anise is she bad. She got a nice body. I'm not gonna even say to be 62. Period. She got me like, okay, I need to go and definitely do some weight training. So anyway, she had on, kind of like a mini dress, black dress. So she was looking good. As he say, his type of eye candy. So she gets to the restaurant. They both kind of feel like they're both, attractive people. He wasn't a bad looking guy at all. But things started to go left. Okay, so she sits down. They kind of do the pleasantries, things of that nature. And my little caveat, I understand that editing can be a plus or a minus, but based on what they presented, Anise started giving her what I call education resume. And this is just a little bit of a tangent. Unless you're in academia and you're talking to somebody else in academia, I don't think most men are gonna ooh and when you talk about how many degrees you have. I just don't think that's the case. I could be wrong. That could just be how I feel. I think they can be impressed that you're an educated woman, but running down the degrees and where and all that, they don't care about that. So she has started doing that, and again, like I say, it could be just a bad edit to emphasize what she had already admitted to us, that people tend to seem to be intimidated by that. So don't know. So anyway, they, talking. She finds out he lives in Chattanooga, blah, 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 Atlanta traffic, that kind of stuff. So then they get into, well, how many kids do you have? Things like that. She says 3. This guy turns to her and say, 3 different baby daddies, or is it the same baby daddy? Can't remember exactly what he said. And she looked at him. She said, "Why would you say that? That's just awful, to ask that." And then he starts explaining, "Well, I've dated women, and they had 3 kids and 3 baby daddies." And then they started giving the excuses as to why. And then Anise, gets him together real quick and say, "Excuses or reasons?" And so I knew right then and there, this date, he wasn't gonna be the one. And so he didn't stop with the baby daddy question. He continued. So at this point, you could tell that Anise probably was, that baby daddy comment was a little bit off-putting. And so, they start looking at the menu, and I don't know, he just really was kind of like not. I don't know. I almost feel like I want to say he wasn't mature. Like he was just kind of immature. Not trying to judge him, right? Because I don't know this man. So, anywho, they get to talking, and so she says, "Well, have you ever dated an older woman?" And he say, "No." And so he's like, "You got to be kidding me," looking at her, because I wouldn't have thought she was 62 either. And so she tells him she's 62. So then, no sooner than she tells him that she's 62, he say, "You had any work done?" And she just like, I know she had to feel like she was being pumped, because as I was watching, I was like, did production put him up to this? Like, is this like a what they call it, a plant? Like, is he a plant to kind of get people hooked to keep watching, the remaining episodes? Because I was like, this is unreal. Unreal. So at this point, Anise and myself, I'm over the date. And I feel like she was too. But she's a very polished, put together woman. So, she soldiered on. So then she asked about, like, I think, does he come down to Atlanta? No, she asks, do you date a lot? And he says, I live in Chattanooga, but I F around in Atlanta. He said the real word. He didn't say F. He said the real thing. And she looked, and I rewind as well. And I said, did he just say what I thought he said? And so at that point, she like, let me excuse myself from the table. And, you kind of hear her saying like, oh, I'm ready for this to be over. So based on how the rest of the day kind of played out, I take it she must have called her Uber. But she goes back to the table. And so he, starting to get a little touchy-feely, touching her hand, touching her arm. And at this point, she's like laughing probably to stop from cussing him out, right? And he gets to saying, I like my women a little ghetto. He like, I know you got it in you. I know you got it in your heart. And she just is laughing like, oh, I got a little ghetto in my heart. Like, I guess she, like I felt like, this is unreal. this, this couldn't have been a real date. Like what was the criteria for him to pass to get to, be on screen with me as a date? And so that is Anise's first date on Later Daters with Mr. George, 60 years old, and acting like a complete clown. So the second person we get introduced to in episode 1 is Suzanne. She is 63. She is, I guess you could say, a semi-retired optometrist, and she is a widow. She had been married for 27 years to her husband, but he had died. Um, she starts running off her list when we first meet her of what she wants and what she don't want, right? She definitely likes her wine, and she loves her Georgia Bulldogs. So I know, I think she went to Georgia for medical school, or she might have went there for, undergrad as well as medical school, but she is a true Georgia Bulldog fan. And so that's part of her criteria as well. So she has this beautiful home, and she has these wind chimes. And so Logan, the dating coach, comes and they're sitting down and everything. And the wind blows, and Suzanne says, that's her husband. And so they talk a little bit about, that marriage and, things of that nature. And had they discussed about, what life will look like once he passed and things of that nature. And she said that, her husband wanted her to find somebody, to, live the rest of her life with and things of that nature. So I thought that was kind of nice. And I think that's really loving for a spouse who, is sick and maybe terminal or what have you, and know that they're going to pass and know that their spouse could still have a lot of life in front of them. I have not matured to that point. If Lord forbid something happened to me, my husband better stay single. But anyway, so Logan gives her some advice. I think Suzanne was saying it's been so long, since she's dated, right? I think she said that her and her husband had started dating when she got out of medical school or something like that at 28, and, had been married for 27 years. And so Logan gave her this tip where it's like, instead of feeling the pressure to, kind of keep going back and forth with small talk, what about you, kids, that kind of thing, you can kind of break the ice by saying, hey, I'm listening to this podcast and, X, Y, and Z happening. So Suzanne really loves Matthew McConaughey. And so she listens to, I guess he has a podcast. And it was so funny because she took that directive from Logan. So she gets to her first date, and her first date is with the attorney named Frank. He's 63. And we'll talk a little bit more about their date. But what was so funny, Suzanne had that, start with the Matthew McConaughey thing. Like, Frank had went into the small talk, like, so you're black, and she's like, wait, I have to tell you, I'm listening to this podcast by Matthew McConaughey, and it was so funny because it was so weird. Like, Frank could have asked his question, you could have answered it, and then went into it. But it was like she had that ingrained in her head, like, nope, gotta talk, do this little tip that Logan gave me. So it was kind of funny to me. So Mr. Frank, he's an attorney. He's 63, not a bad looking guy. Part of Suzanne's don't want list, I guess, or ain't really feeling, or I guess I don't even want to say it's a non-negotiable, because we'll talk about some things she clearly was willing to negotiate a little bit for a different person. But Frank has, I think, a 19 and 16-year-old. And Suzanne was just like, yeah, I'm not interested in helping raise anybody's kids. So that 16-year-old was kind of like, it was, lessening Frank's chances. But you could tell Frank was really like into her. She definitely has good energy. She definitely seems like a good time. She's, I don't know if anybody's ever had that type of doctor that's just like, you can't kind of believe it's your doctor, because they're just so personable and so just regular and just, just a good time. Like, you could tell she knows how to have fun. When she's at work, she's probably, very professional, very on it. But when she's not at work, she's just Suzanne, who loves the Georgia Bulldogs, and definitely likes her wine. So they're like at a little wine bar or whatever, and they kind of throwing them back, and they start to get a little giddy and silly and, things of that nature. And so I guess Frank was really feeling it, because he goes in for a kiss, but Suzanne, she hit him with that, and so he ended up getting her cheek, and she like, behave. It was so funny because they both was lit. They both was tipsy, because I was like, yeah, you never know. Like I say, in editing, it seemed like the date was 10 minutes long, but they could have been there 2 hours, right? And so Suzanne's daughter comes to pick her up, and that kind of ends the date. And they the daughter is along with Suzanne kind of debrief with Logan over the phone and things of that nature. And then they kind of interviewed Frank outside, and he I guess he was so lit he forgot to get her number. So that's kind of how Suzanne's first date went. So she wasn't crazy about him having a 16-year-old. She didn't like that he was not a big Georgia Bulldog fan. He was like, yeah, if I'm betting on him, and he was, he played golf, and she was not into golf. And so, what else? And she felt like he was a little short, but she wears these kind of chunky wedge, heels. And it's like, okay. So I don't know. Frank might have messed up when he went in for that kiss. That might have been a little off-putting to her. So that is Suzanne. That is our second later dater. Okay, so we have our third later dater in episode 1, which is Mr. Nate. He is 56 years old, and he's something different. He has 2 daughters. He was married, I believe, for 16 years. He's ex-military. Super neat, super clean, super organized. And I'll give my 2 cents about why I think he is that way. And it's not just the military background. So we meet Nate, and we also meet his oldest daughter's mom, which is interesting, right? And so they're doing the kind of pre-interview, and he's kind of just talking about what he's looking for, right? He's looking for an educated woman, a curvy woman, kind of typical what you hear somebody, say. So now it's Nate's turn to meet with Logan, to kind of figure out what, tip, guidance, or what have you she can give him in regards to, everybody say they want to, meet somebody, companionship, and all these things. And so Nate starts kind of running down his history. So his oldest daughter's mom name is Jackie. And so he kind of tells how they, kind of hooked up in college. Don't sound like it was something super serious, but they end up, having a child together. And, over the years, because the child is an adult now, they become best friends, right? Then he had a fiance. He reveals the fiance cheated on him and actually had gotten pregnant with another man's child. Then Nate had been married. I want to say he said 16 years, I believe. And then that's where his other daughters, the product of that marriage. And so he said it was some trust issues, but he didn't say anybody cheated or anything like that. And so the running thing that Logan was able to kind of determine is like, Nate kind of having trust issues. And so he ends up revealing that the only woman he's ever trusted was his grandma, which I was like, yeah, that's probably about spot on for a lot of people, right? And so Logan encourages him, like talking about like with trust, right? Trust should be earned. Sometimes we give people trust and they haven't really earned that trust. So part of the trust piece is being vulnerable, right? If I'm vulnerable with you, I'm showing that I must trust you, to a certain degree, or I want to build trust, in you by being vulnerable, right? And so Logan challenges him to share something vulnerable. So, like I mentioned, Nate is past military. He's still government affiliated in regards to his employment based on the show. And so he was, I think it's called a ranger, airborne ranger. They jumped out of the planes. And so they were doing a jump and weather conditions were not ideal or something was not right, and he along with some other soldiers end up having some really really bad injuries. And so that's a sore spot for him. One, because of the injuries, he would not be able to, I guess, achieve and promote the way he had planned or hoped, because maybe it required more, I don't know, physical ability, that he would have just kind of been what he referred to as like a desk sergeant or, desk soldier. And so he ended up, I guess, being discharged, medically or disability or what have you. And so that's a sore spot for him because he had went through ROTC in college and, was a captain. And so he kind of had, a vision for his life in regards to the military. And so to me, this is, again, a little bit of a tangent. To me, that very neat, clean, orderly way that he is about definitely his home and just, I, everything, the way he puts himself together, very well put together. We talking about color coordinated, clothes in the closet, you know, shorts here, shirts there, pants there, like glasses here. Very, very. I think that's a little bit beyond military training. I think because of that accident, Nate wants to feel in control. So if he can keep things neat, order, this nothing will go wrong or nothing will be out of place. That's just my thoughts. Could be totally wrong. Definitely not a therapist, but just from my personal experience and things that I've observed in similar situations, when you get to the root of it, that it's usually something else. Like it's a need to feel in control. And in that moment of his bad accident, he wasn't in control. So I think the house is a reflection of that. So anyhow, and even though Logan kind of noted that like your house is very clean, very neat, very organized, which yeah, it is like a museum. So she gives him that assignment. So he goes on his first date with Latricia. I hope I said it right. And she's pretty. She's actually ex-military. I believe she's 56. Um, she's never been married. She doesn't have any kids, and she's like in IT. So they sit down like a little bistro type restaurant, and they're just kind of going back and forth, pleasantries, finding out they have things in common. Because remember, these are blind dates, so they don't know. And he's a gentleman, gives her flowers, things of that nature. And so she's kind of noting things like, oh, he didn't order a alcoholic drink. So she's like, oh, I don't drink. So then she's like, check. The meal comes out, and Nate asks her, does she pray? Is it okay if they, say grace over the food? And she's like, do I pray? Do I pray? Oh, all excited because he wants to pray over the food. And so he says the prayer or whatever. And then she's like, check. And then, she's like, well, do you go to the clubs? Are you a club guy? He said, no, I'm a homebody. My knees and back ain't like what they used to be, da 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 da. And so she's like, check, check, check. So she's doing all these air checks. And so then she's like, yeah, a God-fearing man. Yes, yes. And then they pan to Nate, and he's like, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I was like, oh, okay, it's something there. So date goes fine. Nate wants to do a selfie at the end of the date. So, she was kind of like, never had no man want to do a selfie on the first date, but okay. And he's like, just to commemorate our first date or whatever. So he walks her to her Uber or what have you. And then he has like his like confessional or whatever. And so he talks about how, she was beautiful. She was fit and, you know, all the pluses, but he's like, I am spiritual. I'm not religious. So I don't go to church every Sunday or whatever. So he was like, I need somebody to check all my boxes. So I was just like, oh my goodness. I thought he was feeling her, but that air checking based on the edit, he was not feeling that. And I don't blame him. I don't blame him because at least for me, in hindsight, I was thinking it's one thing in your head, right? To be like, oh, okay, check for him or check for, another check for him in your head. But I think when men hear that or see that, it might make them think like, she trying to get married tomorrow, or, she trying to be in a relationship tomorrow. So sometimes you got to kind of play it cool, got to play it cool. So again, all these opinions of mine are just that, my opinions. So if those individuals ever watch it, I think you all are great and, would love to get to know you better. Okay. Latricia. So, definitely not throwing, shade or nothing like that. So that was Nate's first date. And so that is how the episode ended. And I was hooked. So I was hooked. And so I would like to know if anyone has watched Later Daters, or hopefully this video will encourage you to go watch Later Daters, and you'll come back to the comment section and put your thoughts down there. I do plan to go and do like a recap with a little bit of my commentary about what I thought about for the remaining episodes. It is an 8-episode series. Again, like I said, on Netflix. It is executively produced by Michelle Obama. So I thought that was kind of cool. And so I'm enjoying it. And at the end of these recaps, like I said, I don't know if I'm going to do 8 separate ones. I think some can probably be combined. But once I'm done with reviewing and commentary on Later Daters, I'm going to give my Later Dater story. I'm not quite 50 and everything, so it'll be a semi-Later Dater story. But I definitely could relate to a lot of the individuals and that were featured in this series. So guys, that is it. Again, thank you so much for supporting my channel, especially these last few weeks when I've been MIA. I appreciate you. Be sure to like this video. Be sure to comment, especially if you have already watched Later Daters, or if you're going to go watch it and come back. I would love to discuss and get your thoughts about it. And also be sure to subscribe or share with others so that they too can come over here and subscribe and vibe out with your girl. I am thinking about going live. So based on how much engagement I get in regards to the comments and people's thoughts, I would love to go live and we can discuss, especially us individuals of a certain age who got married later in life, or are dating again later in life, or just anything kind of surrounding the theme of this show. Okay, and so with that, I am out. Peace.